The smell of markers and floor polish still lingered in the library that afternoon. Jang Ye-seo stood frozen by the front desk, holding a list of damaged books. Her uniform was crisp, her blazer buttoned, and her student council badge gleamed beneath the fluorescent lights. The window beside her framed the chaos inside: shredded pages, ink splatters on the wall, toppled chairs. One of the security staff muttered behind her, "It's clearly him. Again." Ye-seo didn't ask who. She already knew. Kwon Dae-hyun sat in the corner of class 2 to 3 like a shadow no one dared approach. He wore his hoodie beneath his blazer. His sketchbook was always closed. His headphones were always in. He answered no one, smiled at no one, and didn't care who noticed. That morning, he hadn't stood for the anthem. He had rolled his eyes during a group discussion, and when Ye-seo had politely asked him to tuck in his shirt, he hadn't even looked up. So when the vandalism happened in the library and someone whispered his name, she believed it, and she said it out loud. Report Kwon Dae-hyun. By the end of the day, the principal had called him in. By the end of the week, he was suspended, and Ye-seo felt nothing. At least, not at first, because doing the right thing was supposed to feel good, but this didn't. Ye-seo had always followed the rules. Top of her class, student council leader, volunteered in the morning, studied at night, smiled at teachers who never asked if she was tired. Her room was color-coded. Her notes were flawless. Her awards were neatly framed on her bedroom wall. But deep down, she carried a weight she never spoke of, the feeling that if she slipped, even once, everything would fall apart. So when she named Dae-hyun, she thought she was doing what was expected, until she found the security footage. The footage had no audio, but it was clear. Another boy, a second year, nervous and looking over his shoulder, had entered the library late. The vandalism happened minutes later. Dae-hyun never appeared in the frame. Ye-seo stared at the screen in silence. Her heart dropped. She had been wrong. Very, very wrong. She found him the following Monday. He was back in school, slouched against the wall beside the art room, sketching something into a notebook with a black pen. She approached him carefully. Dae-hyun. He didn't look up. "I need to talk to you." Still no response. She shifted her weight. "I saw the footage. It wasn't you. I told the vice principal." "Don't care," he muttered. She swallowed. "I'm sorry." He finally looked at her then, slowly. His eyes were sharp, but there was no surprise in them, just something colder. "You think saying that fixes anything?" "No, but you sleep okay last week? Eat well? Get praise for being such a good student?" Dae-hyun. "I got kicked out of the art competition I'd been preparing for 2 months. My scholarship interview was canceled. My mom cried for 3 days. She had no words. He stepped closer. "You can take your apology and keep it in your perfect little planner." Then he walked past her, and she stood alone in the hallway, with nothing but the sound of her own breathing. From that day on, the silence between them grew louder. She kept trying, small gestures, brief apologies, offering help with assignments. He ignored all of it. But fate, or perhaps punishment, wasn't done yet, because when the pairs for the civic engagement project were announced, their names were side by side on the screen. Jang Ye-seo, Kwon Dae-hyun. The teacher smiled. 2 strong personalities. "Let's see what you create together." She wanted to protest. He didn't even blink, just turned and walked out of the room. They met in the library. Of all places. It was awkward, stiff, cold. He brought a sketchbook. She brought her laptop. The theme was the hidden stories of our school. He said nothing. She started typing. After 10 minutes, he pulled a folded paper from his notebook and placed it between them. She unfolded it. It was a drawing of the library, destroyed, chaotic, but with one figure in the corner, blurred, screaming silently. It was her. She looked at him. "You drew me?" He didn't look up. You stood there for 6 minutes before calling anyone. That's what I remember. Her throat tightened. Later that week, they worked in clubroom alone. She dropped her pencil case. Everything spilled. He picked up a pen. This one's chewed. She laughed without meaning to. I was 10. It's a habit. He didn't smile, but she saw his eyes soften. She bent to pick up the rest. Something fell from her binder, a tiny, tattered notebook. He reached it first. When he flipped it open, she panicked. Wait! But he had already read the first line. Sometimes I wonder what it's like to live without fear of failure. She reached for it. He didn't hand it back immediately. You wrote this? She nodded, embarrassed. He closed the notebook gently. Feels real. They started talking. Not much. Not often. But enough. She learned that he used to have an older brother who wanted to be an architect. He learned that she hated math and cried during documentaries. They built their project like a patchwork. His drawings, her words. And one night, after a long work session, she looked at him differently. Not with guilt, but with something warmer. Something dangerous. Something that felt a lot like the beginning of a story she wasn't supposed to be in. They weren't friends. Not officially. No one saw them eat together, or laugh in the hallways, or exchange texts during class. But they shared something else now. Late afternoons in the library, silent bus rides home, lingering glances across classrooms. Ye-seo didn't know when the guilt had faded into something else. Something heavier. Something she was starting to carry with both hands. Not because she had to, but because she wanted to. She never thought about falling for Kwon Dae-hyun. But she was already halfway down, and he hadn't even reached out to catch her yet. Their project started to attract attention. Students noticed a display board in the corridor, original drawings paired with personal narratives about quiet kids, overworked teachers, and the invisible pressure of school life. Who's drawing this? I didn't know Jang Ye-seo could write like that. Isn't this the guy who got suspended? For the first time, Ye-seo didn't feel proud of the praise. She felt protective. Of him. Of what they were building. Of the fragile space between apology and affection. One day, after school, she found him in the art room. He didn't look up. You're early, he said. I didn't feel like going home. He tapped the end of his pencil. What happened? She sat beside him. Another college prep interview. Another perfect answer I didn't believe in. He raised an eyebrow. She shrugged. They asked why I wanted to study law. I said, to help people. But the truth is, I don't even know if I want to be anything anymore. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed. Then what do you want? The question caught her off guard. I want to feel free. Just once. He stared at her, then slowly reached into his bag, pulled out a folded piece of paper, unfolded it, a sketch of her, eyes closed, wind in her hair, standing in the middle of the empty schoolyard. Like this, he asked. She stared at it. Her voice cracked. Yes. Later that week, something changed. He smiled. Not fully, not openly, but he smiled. She caught it as they walked side by side past the gym. Was that a real smile? She teased. He rolled his eyes. Don't get greedy. She laughed, and something in her chest broke open. But not everything had healed. One afternoon, she was called into the principal's office. The door clicked shut behind her. Principal Shin folded his hands on the desk. We received some feedback about your current civic project. She kept her posture straight. Is there a problem? There's concern that your partner, Kwon Dae-hyun, may not be the best representative of student leadership. Her throat tightened. With all due respect, he's not representing leadership. He's representing truth. Shin frowned. The school board has decided the suspension will remain on his record, even though the other student has confessed. Ye-seo froze. The real culprit confessed? Yes, but after the disciplinary period. And technically, the report was filed under your name. She sat in silence. They won't retract it? No. And what about the student who actually did it? A formal warning. Nothing more. She stood. This isn't right. The principal sighed. It's not about right or wrong. It's about order. Her voice didn't waver. Then maybe order's the wrong thing. She found Dae-hyun on the rooftop later that day. Told him everything. He didn't look surprised. I knew they wouldn't change it. But it's not fair. He gave a small shrug. School's never been fair. Life either. She stared at him. I hate this. I know. I'm so... He stopped her with a glance. You already said sorry. This part isn't yours to carry anymore. But you're the one suffering. I've been suffering for a long time, Ye-seo. He looked away. I lost my brother 2 years ago. He was driving to pick me up from a study hall. I skipped. I didn't answer his call. He turned around on the highway and... He paused. Breathe in. That's the kind of punishment no school record compares to. She didn't speak. Just walked to him. Stood close. Close enough that he could hear her heart. I wish I had known, she said. He gave a broken smile. Me too. The next day, they were scheduled to present their project to the parents and board members. It was supposed to be formal, scripted, clean. Ye-seo stood backstage, watching the slideshow flick through their work. The students watching were quiet. The teachers were tense. And in the front row sat Principal Shin. Beside him, Dae-hyun sat silently, not allowed on stage, just assisting with setup. Her name was called. She stepped forward, took a breath, then said, I was asked to talk about what this project means. But I think the better question is, why does this school need projects like this at all? The room shifted. Ye-seo's voice grew stronger. I've spent 3 years doing everything right. I followed rules. I smiled. I corrected uniforms. I made announcements about proper behavior. And I told myself that meant I was helping. She looked down at her own student council badge. But I got someone punished for something he didn't do. And even when the truth came out, no one corrected it. Because the lie was easier. A teacher stood. Ye-seo, that's not a proper. She didn't stop. If justice means silence, then I prefer to make mistakes by speaking out. Gasps rippled across the room. She pulled the badge from her chest, placed it on the podium, and walked off stage. Outside, in the courtyard, it was already dark. She stood under the lamplight, trembling, and then she felt him behind her. Dae-hyun. He didn't say anything. She turned to him. He stared at her, eyes unreadable. I couldn't stay quiet anymore, she said. He nodded once. I know. Are you mad? No. She exhaled. I think I just ended my perfect record. He stepped closer. I think you finally started living. Then, without another word, he kissed her. No music, no spotlight, just them, under the courtyard lights. 2 people who had stopped pretending. No one said anything the next day, not to her face, not in words, but the silence in the corridors spoke volumes. Students glanced sideways when she walked by. Some whispered. Teachers avoided eye contact. Her homeroom teacher handed her attendance sheets without a greeting. Even her classmates, the ones who once begged for help during exams, barely nodded now. Ye-seo had gone from respected to controversial overnight, all because she told the truth. Dae-hyun, on the other hand, seemed entirely unaffected. He still showed up late, still sat in the back, still listened to music during announcements. But there was something different. He waited for her after class, passed her small notes instead of messages, shared drawings that looked a little too much like her to be coincidence. And once, during lunch, he pulled a chair beside her in the art room and said, I think you made the whole school flinch. She smirked. That's not a compliment, is it? He raised an eyebrow. I'm not sure, but it was kind of beautiful. They started walking home together. It was never planned. She would leave through the east gate. He'd be waiting there, earphones in, looking at the sky like it had answers. Sometimes they talked. Sometimes they didn't. But in those silences, she discovered something she never knew she needed. Peace. No pressure. No expectations. Just presence. Her parents noticed a change. Her father frowned when she stopped attending council meetings. Her mother looked up from her planner one evening and asked, "Is everything all right at school?" Ye-seo paused with her spoon halfway to her mouth. "Yes." "Then why aren't you preparing for the student speech this term?" Ye-seo put her spoon down. "Because I gave up the badge." Silence. Her father blinked. "You what?" "I stepped down. It didn't feel right anymore." Her mother's voice dropped. "Do you have any idea what colleges expect? You worked 3 years." "I know," she said, not angry, just tired. "But I'm not going to keep pretending anymore." And for once, neither of them had a response. One rainy afternoon, Ye-seo found herself in the school auditorium. It was empty, chairs stacked, curtains drawn, the smell of dust in the air. Dae-hyun entered quietly behind her. He stood on the edge of the stage while she paced slowly in the center. "You ever wonder who you'd be if no one was watching?" she asked. "All the time." She turned to him. "I used to think being perfect meant being safe. And now I think it just made me invisible." He walked closer. "You were never invisible." She gave a soft laugh. "You say that because you see things other people don't." He didn't deny it. She watched him draw one day after school. The way he moved the pencil in soft, looping lines, shading with his finger, erasing with precise strokes. "You're going to be famous," she said. He scoffed. "Sure. I mean it. Your work has so." He looked at her. "No one's ever called it that before. They should." But their quiet world wasn't protected from the real one. Rumors started to spread again. Someone posted anonymously on the school forum. "Of course the model student fell for the delinquent. She's just as fake as everyone else." Another comment read, "He manipulated her. She gave up her position for a guy who doesn't even try." Ye-seo saw it late one night. She didn't cry. She didn't panic. She just stared at the screen, wondering how people could be so sure of things they didn't understand. The next morning, Dae-hyun met her at the gate. "I saw it," he said. "I figured you would. I can say something." She shook her head. "They won't stop." "Then let me draw them all with egg faces and post it online." She laughed despite herself. "I think I like you more for that than I should." He smiled. "Then we're even. I like you more than I meant to, too." College applications approached. She applied to universities in Seoul. He applied to art school. Their paths, for the first time, didn't align. "You'll leave," he said one night. "I'll come back." "But things change." "Then we'll change with them." He studied her for a long time. "You believe that?" "I want to." He nodded. "That's enough." Min-ho, the real vandal, the boy who confessed too late, approached her one day in the hallway. "Hey," he muttered. She stared at him. He rubbed the back of his neck. "I'm sorry for what I did, for not saying it sooner." She didn't reply. He shifted, uncomfortable. "You're mad." "I'm tired," she said. He looked down. "I'll write a formal statement. For your record. For his too. It won't change anything. But maybe it'll help." She nodded, and for the first time, she didn't feel like punishing someone. She just felt done. Dae-hyun came to her house once. Met her parents. It was awkward. Her father asked him what his real plans were. Her mother offered him green tea and told him not to ruin Ye-seo's reputation. He just smiled politely and said, "I'm just here to love her, not ruin her." That night, her mother didn't speak during dinner. Her father cleared his throat and said, "He's honest, at least." And that, for Ye-seo, was a victory. On the last day of school, she received an envelope in her locker. No name. Inside, a sketch. Her, standing on a stage, holding a burning speech in one hand and a paper badge in the other. At the bottom, Dae-hyun had written, "Mistakes make better stories." That evening, as snow began to fall, she met him under the courtyard tree. He held out a scarf. "You forgot this." She smiled. "I think you like returning my things just to see me smile." Maybe. Definitely. She leaned in. "I never said thank you." "For what?" "For changing the way I see the world." He didn't answer. He just kissed her again, soft, sure, real. And when they pulled apart, she whispered, "I don't want perfect anymore." He touched her cheek. "Good, because I'm not." January arrived with frozen sidewalks and deadlines. The campus was covered in frost. Seniors ran from building to building with application folders clutched tight, their breath visible in the freezing air, their futures carried in manila envelopes. Ye-seo had submitted hers early. So had Dae-hyun, though he never told her until she found his art portfolio spread across the library table late one afternoon. "You're applying to Hanguk University?" she asked, eyes wide. He didn't look up. "Just trying." "You didn't even tell me." "I didn't want you to expect anything." She sat beside him. "I never expected anything. I hope for everything." He glanced at her, surprised, then smiled. A real one. Their project from the semester before was now pinned on the main school bulletin board, a mix of sketches and essays titled, "The Stories We Erased." Students walked by every day. Some stopped to read. Some didn't. But Ye-seo watched one girl stand for 10 straight minutes in front of the display. She never said a word, but when she walked away, her eyes were wet. Ye-seo turned to Dae-hyun, who stood beside her. "We did something that mattered," she said. He nodded, and for once, she didn't need anyone else's approval. But peace is not something high school lets you keep for long. At the semester-end parents' meeting, Ye-seo was asked to speak, formally, as a former class leader, to show student excellence and maturity. She wanted to say no, but something inside her said it was time. She prepared a speech the way she always had, bullet points, transitions, printed copies. But the night before, she tore it up and started writing again, this time from the heart. The auditorium was full. Teachers, parents, students. The principal introduced her with warmth in his voice, as if they had never stood on opposite sides of the same truth. She walked slowly to the podium, her footsteps echoing louder than any applause. Then she began, "I'm not who I was at the start of this year." She looked at the crowd. "I used to think being right was more important than being honest. That following the rules meant I was doing the right thing. That staying quiet when I saw something wrong meant I was being strong." She paused. "Then I met someone who made me question everything. And I made mistakes. Big ones. Ones that cost people more than they should have. I hurt someone who didn't deserve it. I protected a system that punishes truth-telling more than lying." A whisper ran through the crowd. She raised her chin. "I stepped down from my role because I realized it wasn't leadership if I was only repeating what others wanted to hear. I believe we need to tell the truth, even when it's uncomfortable, especially then." A beat. "And if justice means silence, then I'd rather make mistakes by speaking out." Gasps. Some claps. Some murmurs. Her mother sat in the front row, lips tight. Her father sat beside her, arms crossed, but nodding. And Dae-hyun, he stood against the back wall, hands in his pockets, eyes on her. When she met his gaze, her voice didn't shake. "I'm not perfect. I'm learning to live with that." And then she walked off stage. Outside, it had started snowing again. The courtyard was mostly empty. Only a few parents chatting by the entrance, a couple of students taking pictures in front of the school nameplate. She stood by the tree again, the one where everything always seemed to come full circle. Footsteps approached behind her. She didn't need to turn. "You came," she said. Dae-hyun exhaled softly. "Wouldn't miss it." Even after I ignored your texts all week, I figured you were writing a speech. She turned to him. He pulled something from his coat pocket, a small keychain. Tiny, handmade, a miniature paintbrush wrapped in thread. I wanted to give you this after your speech, he said, but now it feels like I should have given it to you before. She took it in her hand, ran her thumb across it. What's it for? To remind you you're allowed to color outside the lines. She blinked. That was cheesy. He shrugged. So was the speech. She laughed. I meant every word. I know. They stood there in silence, watching snow settle on the sidewalk. Then she asked, what if we don't end up in the same city next year? Then I'll draw you a map every month. She smiled. And what if we change? Then we'll fall for the new versions. She leaned in. I'm scared of starting over. He touched her cheek. Then, don't. Just keep going. That weekend, he invited her to the art studio where he worked part-time. It was messy, smelled like paint thinner and paper dust. She loved it instantly. He showed her his canvas, half-finished, lines still uncertain. It's me, she said, surprised. Not yet. He looked at the painting. I'm still figuring out how to draw someone who made me feel seen. She swallowed hard. You already did. One night, she walked home past midnight after a cram session with a classmate. He was waiting outside her building, leaning against the wall, eyes half closed, hands cold. I just wanted to say good night, he said. She stepped close, took his hand. It's morning. Then good morning. She kissed him, quick, honest, then whispered, you never had to be perfect either. Finals came and went. The school year ended with quiet goodbyes and exam stress and backpacks growing heavier with futures. Ye-seo submitted her university deposit. Dae-hyun received a letter with gold foil on the corner. He opened it in front of her. Accepted. She tackled him to the ground in the snow. They laughed for a long time. On the last day before break, they returned to the courtyard one last time. The tree was bare. The school was almost empty. I used to hate this place, he said. Me too, she admitted. He looked at her. But you made it different. She squeezed his hand. You made me different too. They stood quietly. Then she said, promise me something. He nodded. Keep being loud, even when no one listens. He touched her forehead gently. Only if you promise to stop being perfect. I already did. And in that empty courtyard, the one that'd seen her shame, his silence, their first kiss, and their last goodbye before change, they stood without fear, no longer perfect, no longer alone, just human. Spring came quietly that year. Cherry blossoms bloomed early, scattered across the school courtyard like delicate promises. The halls felt emptier, lighter, the usual chaos replaced by countdowns to graduation, final grades, and college orientation checklists. Jang Ye-seo walked slower these days. She smiled more, laughed a little louder, spoke with a steadier voice. But what changed most wasn't what people could see. It was what she let go of, the need to be flawless, the fear of failing, the weight of other people's expectations. And somehow, in that release, she found something better. She found herself. Kwon Dae-hyun had changed too, not dramatically, not in the ways people expected. He still wore his hoodie under his uniform jacket, still sketched in the back of the classroom, still stared out the window during lectures, but he showed up on time, prepared, present, and most of all, open. They didn't define what they were. They didn't call it dating. They just existed together, meeting in the art room between classes, walking home in silence, sharing bento boxes on a rooftop, and arguing about music taste. Some days, they didn't talk much at all. Other days, they talked about everything, their families, their fears, their futures. And every time Ye-seo doubted herself, Dae-hyun would say the same thing. Who said you have to know everything already? The school hosted a spring showcase in April. Clubs from every department prepared presentations, exhibits, and performances. It was supposed to be simple, light, just tradition. But Ye-seo had one last idea. She walked into the art room one afternoon and dropped the sketchbook in front of Dae-hyun. "What's this?" he asked. "Proof of that you were here, that you mattered, that what you created, what we created, changed something." He flipped through the pages. Inside were excerpts from their project, her writing, his illustrations, quotes from classmates who had seen it, anonymous messages from students who said it gave them courage. At the back, there was a blank page. She pointed at it. "Draw the last piece." He looked up at her. "What should it be?" She shrugged. "Us." He stared at the page, then said, "Okay." The day of the showcase arrived. Their table was tucked in a quiet hallway near the art wing. Not many passed through, but those who did stopped, looked, read, cried. Some parents even took pictures. One teacher, the same who once warned Ye-seo not to get too emotional, whispered, "Thank you," before moving on, and Dae-hyun, standing beside her, held her hand the entire time. In the middle of it all, Min-ho approached him again. He handed Dae-hyun a folded letter. "From the board, I filed the appeal." Ye-seo blinked. "You what?" He rubbed his neck, embarrassed. Took a while, but the vice principal pushed it through. They're expunging the suspension. Dae-hyun stared at the paper, then looked at Min-ho. "Why?" Min-ho hesitated. "Because I should have spoken up sooner. And because what you said in your project about how silence could become a lie stuck." He walked away without waiting for thanks. Dae-hyun unfolded the paper, then passed it to Ye-seo. Her hands trembled as she read it. "It's gone," she whispered. He nodded. Finally, graduation came in May. Daesung High's auditorium overflowed with flowers, nervous laughter, and camera shutters. Ye-seo stood in line backstage, wearing her navy gown and the medal given to her for academic achievement. But she didn't care about the medal. She cared about the boys standing in the back row, away from the crowd, sketchbook under one arm. When her name was called, she didn't walk across the stage. She ran. The audience gasped. Her homeroom teacher's eyes widened. The principal leaned forward, but Ye-seo only had eyes for one person. She stopped in front of Dae-hyun. He looked stunned. "What are you?" She kissed him, not shyly, not quietly. A real kiss, in front of classmates, teachers, parents. Applause erupted. Some laughed, some cheered, but all Ye-seo heard was the sound of his breath against hers. When she pulled back, she whispered, "That's how I wanted to end the story." He smiled. "You just wrote the perfect ending." But it wasn't the end. They walked home after the ceremony, her hand in his, her medal swinging gently with each step. At the crosswalk near the river, she paused. "What now?" she asked. He looked ahead. "We build new stories." She nodded. "And if they don't go the way we want?" He turned to her. "Then we rewrite them. Together." That summer, they both left the city, different campuses, different majors, different daily lives. But every week, a letter arrived in her dorm mailbox. A sketch, a line of poetry, a shared memory. He never signed them. He didn't need to, and she never stopped writing back. The last page of the sketchbook, he gave her that spring stayed blank for months. Until one night, as rain tapped against her window, she picked up a pen. She wrote, "I was never perfect, but I was brave." Then closed it and smiled.